Brian wants to know how can he get a signal from BloodHound when an indicator goes flat. So we can see when he's using the WilliamsR on these Ranko bars that the WilliamsR basically kind of maxes out down here at -100 or at 0. Right, so he wants to know when the indicator goes flat or horizontal. So, all right. So with that, give me a moment to set my chart up and we'll get started here. So, all right. So good. We can see the WilliamsR is flattening out here. All right. So this is what we're interested in finding. There we go. Those flat areas. Actually, let me just take a peek at the screenshot and let's see. Yeah, it's just using a 14 period. Okay. Yeah, it looks like this might have a. Yeah, this looks like the bars have a 2-tick closing price difference. So, which will probably make the indicator look a little different here. So let me just make that adjustment. I think it would be the tick trend. And yeah, there we go. All right, makes the indicator look a little different there. Okay, so there we go. Those are kind of the spots we're looking for here. Now, I would actually, well, I'll show 2 ways of doing this. So, since the WilliamsR runs in its own sub-panel, we know that basically this indicator is only going flat when it's either 0 or -100. So there's kind of 2 ways that we could look for this condition here. Which is different than how the question was phrased. So the question was phrased, looking for a slope. So we'll show both ways in BloodHound on how we can look for a horizontal slope, but more appropriately, we can just look for the WilliamsR at the -100 or at the 0 value there. So, all right, to get us started, we're going to open up BloodHound using the button up here at the top. There we go. And first thing I want to do is put my file name in there, so I'll just use the change button to do that. And I'll use last week's file. And all right, welcome to February 1st. Okay, there we go. We'll save that. All right. So we have today's workshop file name in there. And next, I'm going to start working on the log tab here. And we're going to start a new logic template. Like so, let me change the name here. So, all right. So that's kind of what we're looking for, is a flat slope here. All right. So I'll answer the question directly, which is looking for a slope that's horizontal. In other words, a flat slope here. So let's grab a slope solver. And let me change the indicator name here. So this is looking for a flat Williams or William, yeah, it's plural, WilliamsR. Okay, we have a name in there. Next, let's plug our indicator in. So we'll scroll down to the W's. There's the WilliamsR. All right, and if you're gonna change the period, make sure to do that up there, but I'm just gonna use the default period. And we can see the WilliamsR only has 1 plot, so there's nothing to do there. That's already selected for us. Now, here is the key condition we're looking for, a value at slope 0. All right, so a slope of 0 is a flat slope. So we want to turn the other outputs off here, right? So let's set those to 0. All Alright, so there we go. We get no output now. And we'll set this to 1. And there we go. So simple enough. We can see, right, we're getting a long and a short out of this solver, right? Because a flat slope is not it's non-directional, right? So typically when something is non-directional, you're going to get a long and a short out at the same time. Right? So that's it. Simply, if you're going to use the slope solver, bingo, we're done. Now, probably what would be more desired would be to generate a short signal, right, when the WilliamsR is flat at -100, and probably generate a long signal when the WilliamsR is at the top here at the 0 value, right? So one way we can do that is we can use the threshold solver. So since the WilliamsR, let me shrink the chart up a little bit. Since the WilliamsR runs inside its own sub panel, right? So the WilliamsR, we can see it's running between 0 and -100. Those values can be used as threshold values. So with the threshold indicator, let's plug it into our result node here. So let me actually put a name in here first. And so we're going to be looking for 0 or -100. And let's plug our indicator in. There we go. All right, so I'm just using the default period of 14. So there's only one plot that's already selected for us. So we're good to go. So now we need to plug in those threshold values. So the upper one is 0. And the lower one, if we look at the indicator, is -100. So let's put down here -100, like so. Now let's plug in the outputs. So we want a long output when the indicator's at 0 or greater, and let's put a 1 in there. Now, you notice how there's no output, right? Well, pay attention to what this says. It says greater than 0. So the indicator only goes to 0. It's never going to go greater than 0. So we're going to have to actually use the at 0 for that. And let's see. Maybe the indicator actually doesn't get to 0. It's interesting. All right, let me do a slight adjustment here. There we go. All right, that worked. It appears the indicator doesn't actually get to 0. So I had to put a value in here slightly less than 0. So now on my long output, I can actually just do this. There we go. All right, so that took care of the long output, and now the short output should be here. Well, actually it says less than 100, right? So if we put that in there, and all right, so actually it does get down to -100 there. Okay, now take a look at BloodHound's output here. You notice how on the short side we're getting a fuzzy logic kind of output, right? An analog type of an output. That looks very similar to the indicator's plot, right? The shape of the short output looks kind of like the shape of the indicator, and that's due to BloodHound's fuzzy logic here. And the reason why is because the threshold solver is interpolating between 0 and -100, right, on the short side here. Now, on the long side here, there is no interpolation between 0 and essentially what is almost 0 here. So what I could do to get rid of this analog kind of output on the short side, the simple solution is you just put in the value twice. So for D and E, I make them the same here. And as I thought, oh yeah, there we go. So on the short output, put that in there. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to need a value in between here. Actually, or I could just put that in twice, a third time. So, yeah. Oh, no, oh, yeah. Actually, what's that's right. I overlooked one thing here. The way the threshold solver works is your values have to be in descending order, and this value here, this negative number, is actually less than 0. So this is not in descending order. So I should put in here something like negative 0.5, like so. And let's see, we're still getting that. This is a interesting indicator. Oh, sorry, I'm reading the indicator wrong. It's -1, not -100. No wonder. There we go. All right, simple oversight on the indicator. So there we go. So, hopefully one of the things you can abstract from this is, when you're playing around with an indicator in BloodHound, don't be afraid to, test some other values until you get the result that you want, right? So it is definitely easy to make some assumptions here. Like, I don't know why, but I mistook -1 for -100. Maybe it's because I'm so used to working with the stochastics in my examples, so maybe that's why. But it is easy to oversee things like this. Oh, wait, sorry. It is -100. All right, so yeah, I was looking at BloodHound here, but actually the indicator is -100. So, all right, so let's go back here. So let's put -50 in here. All right, we're getting there. Well, let's try the same. I'm going to try the same trick with -100 as I did with 0, right? So remember, for threshold A, I couldn't get 0 to work because maybe the indicator doesn't technically get up to 0. Although you got to keep in mind, NinjaTrader rounds values off, right? NinjaTrader rounds values off. So I might have to do something like this. Let's go 99.99999. We'll try something like that. And there we go. All right. So yeah, with the WilliamsR, I had to use values that were slightly less than 0 and slightly more than -100. So interesting indicator. It doesn't quite get to 0 and it doesn't quite get to -100. All right, so there we go. We figured it out. So probably the threshold solver is probably how I'm guessing how probably most people are gonna want to, identify these flat conditions on the WilliamsR. All right, well, that does it for that question. So let me see if there's any follow-up questions on this, and it does not look like it. Oh, there we go. All right, so Frank's got a question here. So please modify it to detect when the slope stops being flat after a fixed number. Okay, after a fixed number of flatness. let's see. All right, so Frank, it sounds like what you're wanting to do, let me stretch the chart out a little bit, is you probably want to get rid of situations like this. To use this as an exit signal, I'm thinking that Frank wants to get rid of these like single bar, yeah, single bar signals here, where the indicator only touches 0 or touches -100 for like only 1 bar or 2 bars or something like that. So, all right. So if we wanted to do that, simple way is we could just use the look back node here, and we can look back. We don't want to use the displacement, so we're going to set the displacement to 0, but we'll set the look back to essentially however many bars you want the indicator to be flat for. So if we want the indicator to be flat for at least 2 bars before we get a BloodHound signal here, we'll set our look back to 2, and our mode is we want to use a minimum. So think of it as we want a minimum of 2 bars. We want a minimum of 2 bars of signals coming out, or 2 bars of a signal coming out of this solver here, right? So let's plug that into the look back, plug that in, and there we go. So now we got rid of this one here, got rid of that single bar signal. So let's find, here we go. There we have 2 bars at least. Plug that in, and there we go. So, and all you need to do is, so if you want to look for a minimum of 3 bars in a row where the indicator's flat, we can just set that to 3, and there we go. So we can see we got rid of the output for this area right here, right? Because the WilliamsR was only at 0 for 2 bars, not 3. Down here, the WilliamsR was flat for 3 bars. And there we go. And we got a signal on that 3rd bar there. All right, so with that, let me see if there's any follow-ups on that, on what we have so far. All right, let's see here. So Frank was looking at the long run at 932. Yeah, here we go. Right there, this long run. Okay. All right, well, that does it for our first question. So the room is now open. So if anybody else has any questions, feel free. Now's your opportunity to ask your questions. All right, so Frank wants to know, wants to generate a signal after the indicator is no longer flat. Okay. All right, that we can do. All right, so Frank would like to know when the indicator is no longer flat at like those points there. So we'll mark a couple of bars here, like so. All right. Now, given the bar types that we're using, and with the indicator, the real easy answer is, we can see that the indicator stops being flat whenever a reversal bar is generated, right? Reversal bar. Because we're using Rankos, essentially reversal bars are, reversal bars stop the indicator from being flat. So for anybody using Ranko bars, those reversal bars really would be a more appropriate way of, a simpler way of identifying, right, when your indicators, basically when the WilliamsR is no longer flat. But to answer the question more generally, in case you're using some other bar besides Ranko bars, maybe you're using range bars or something else, but so let's see. Yeah, we want to identify when a signal ends. Yeah, let's see. I had done this before. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to make a copy of this logic template here, because this is kind of getting into a different question here. So, all right, so we're going to mark when a signal ends. Let's see, I'll get rid of this slope solver. All right. Let's see. So, thinking out loud here. So, in order to get a signal on the next bar over, you always have to take the current output. So in other words, we have to take the output, that exists for this bar, right? So this last bar that has an output, we have to take this output and extend it forward in time to the next bar. So that's the first step right there. So the way we can do that is with Ninja's displacement function. So we're going to use a displacement of 1, right? And I'm going to set I'm going to set this look back down to 1. So, because we don't need the look back, the only thing we need is the displacement here. Okay, so there we can see we have the signal on the reversal bar, which is where we want to generate a signal. So remember, I marked with the dots these reversal bars where we want a signal, because these reversal bars is the bar after the signal ended. Okay, so we have a signal there. And let's see, the next step. Let's see, I think the way I've done it before is, let's see, I think I used an XOR, or I can use the relational. Actually, I think the relational is the better one to use. Yes. All right, I'm going to use the relational here. So our solver is going to go into A, and I'll take the look back, plug that into B. And now what I'm looking for is, let's see, the compare mode. I actually want, let's see, A less than B. Yes, there we go. A less than B. Yep. All right, so let's break this down here and discover how this works. How is this working? So remember, our solver is A, right? Our solver output is A. So let's mark that. Okay, so we have A marked. Excuse me. Now let's mark B. Right. All right. I'll move B a little higher. There we go. And we'll do the same over here. I'll move B a little lower. So if we look at our relational node, A is less than B. And I'm going to get BloodHound open a lot here. And see if I can get an arrow going. Yeah, shoot. Well, no, this will work. There we go. So remember, so A had an output back here, back 1 bar. So on the bar, remember on the bar with the dots, so remember that this reversal bar is after after the indicator goes flat. So the indicator goes flat. Here, I'll color this here. All right, so the indicator is flat right during the red box, on the bars with the red box, and that is and that's the output for A. So in our relational node, in this comparison mode, that's input A. So if we scroll in here, if we zoom in, right, the relational node has an A input and it has a B input, an A and a B input. So so on the bar in question, the input for A is 0. It doesn't exist. And let me connect this here. Right, there we go. So that's A. So on this bar, let's mark it with a dot here. There we go. So on the bar with the dot, right, A has no output, right? A equals 0. And then B, if we look at B, so our look back node is input B. Well, input B does have an output. It has a value, right? So if we look at our compare mode, so on this particular bar here, right, the bar with the dot, A has a value of 0, and B actually has a value. So B is always going to be greater than A, or in other words, A is less than B. So that's how the relational node is working, right? Same thing back here. Right, so it's just a repeat. So let me color this here. All right. So A is essentially has an output on the green box, but the bar in question is where the dot is, right? And where the dot is, A has an output value of 0, and what we're looking at, so this output signal that we're looking at on that bar, that's B. That's the input of B. And so B is greater than A, as the compare mode shows. So that's how that is working. All right, so let's see, let me just stretch the chart out a little bit there. And let's see, these aren't actually appropriate, these probably aren't appropriate short signals. And that would be, let me grab another arrow here. So you're probably going to be long. You probably are going to try and be long during during this uptrend. So if you're long, you actually want a short signal as your exit, right? So if this is intended to be an exit signal, you'll want a short signal on this bar when you're in a long trade. So one last thing to do, probably what the best thing to do is to just reverse the outputs. Make a copy of your threshold solver. You can make a copy of this threshold solver, and then reverse the outputs here. That would be the more appropriate thing, right? Is just reverse your outputs. But in lieu of doing that, I can use a long-short modifier, and we can see the default mode for the long-short modifier is swap. So it's going to swap the long and short signals here. So I like to just rename that solver so you know what it's doing, like so. So if we just swap that output, there we go. And now we have a short signal after that long run. All right, well, with that, I guess we'll wrap this up. So, if I don't see you in tomorrow's Blackbird workshop, then have a good weekend.